Beneath the surface of Earth, where the light of the sun never reached, an ancient tomb lay silent. Forgotten by time, hidden beneath layers of stone and metal, it was a place where no one dared venture. But then, something stirred. A low hum echoed through the darkness, a hum that seemed to pulse with life itself. The tomb, sealed for thousands of years, was beginning to awaken. Inside, an ancient human lay, perfectly preserved, deep in slumber. His name had been lost to history, but the legends called him the First. His body, though still, held an air of power, of something greater than human understanding. The tomb, once a place of death, was now a place of rebirth. The air in the tomb grew warmer as energy coursed through the long-forgotten mechanisms hidden in the stone walls. A soft vibration began beneath the First's body, subtle at first, but gradually growing stronger. It was the hum of life returning. Slowly, his eyes fluttered open, revealing deep pools of ancient knowledge that had been dormant for 50,000 years. For a moment, he did not know where he was. He blinked, his surroundings unfamiliar, his mind clouded by the fog of deep sleep. But then, memories began to return. He was human, or at least he had been once. He had been part of a great civilization, one that spanned across the stars. His people had built great cities, advanced technology beyond imagination, and forged empires that stretched across the galaxy. But something had gone wrong. A betrayal, a war, something had caused his people to vanish from the galaxy. And he, the First, had been cast into this deep sleep, a last measure to preserve his life. The First sat up slowly, the stone slab beneath him cold and unyielding. His limbs felt stiff, his muscles unused to movement. But there was something more, something deeper than the physical discomfort. It was a sense of urgency, a feeling that the time had come for something. He wasn't sure what it was, but it felt like the entire galaxy was waiting for him to awaken. As his senses sharpened, he noticed a change in the air. The tomb, once a silent grave, was now filled with life. He turned his head, and his eyes widened in shock. Standing before him, in perfect formation, were figures, human figures, though not quite like any humans he remembered. Their bodies were clad in armor, their faces obscured by helmets, but their posture was unmistakable. They stood at attention, waiting. There were thousands of them, perhaps even tens of thousands. They were not alive in the way the First had once known, but their presence was undeniable. These were not just soldiers. They were warriors, crafted from the genes of the First Stone people. They had been created, enhanced, and preserved through the ages, just as he had. And they had waited for his return. The First stood on shaky legs, his body gradually adjusting to the movement. He reached out, placing a hand on one of the figures. The warrior didn't flinch, but the connection was undeniable. There was a power in their design, something that resonated deep within him. These were his creations, his soldiers made to protect him and his people. He opened his mouth, his voice gravelly from disuse. "What year is it?" His words echoed in the silent tomb, carrying a weight of forgotten time. The warriors remained still, their eyes fixed ahead. No answer came. Frustration rose within the First, but he pushed it aside. He had more pressing concerns. His mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of memory that had surfaced. Something had happened to Earth, something that had caused humanity to fall into obscurity. The warriors standing before him were the last remnants of a civilization long gone. Suddenly, a soft sound broke the silence. It was a voice, but not the voice of one of the warriors. The First turned to see a figure stepping from the shadows of the tomb. This was different from the soldiers. This person was human, or at least appeared to be. She was older, her face lined with age, but her eyes were sharp, full of knowledge. She approached the First with a calm that betrayed no fear. "You've finally awoken," she said, her voice steady. "We have waited for you." The First studied her carefully, his mind still clouded but slowly clearing. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice still rough but demanding an answer. "I am a descendant of the people who once called this place home," she replied, her tone almost reverent. "I have lived among the remnants of Earth, watching as the stars we once controlled have slipped from our grasp. But now you are here, and that changes everything." The first's brow furrowed. "The galaxy, what happened to humanity?" The woman hesitated for a moment, as though gathering the right words. "Humanity is no more, or so they believe. Earth was abandoned, forgotten, lost. The galaxy moved on, and in its wake, other species rose to power. But they don't know the truth. They don't know what humanity was capable of. And now, you are our only hope." The first stared at her, his mind swirling with questions. He wanted to demand more answers, but something else was calling to him. A deeper instinct, a hunger for knowledge, for action. The time for answers would come later. For now, he had to understand what lay beyond the tomb. He turned toward the warriors, still standing silently in formation. "What is your purpose?" he asked, the words sounding foreign coming from his mouth. "They are yours to command," the woman said. "They were created for one purpose: to protect humanity's legacy, to defend Earth, to restore the power that was lost." The first's eyes narrowed. The warriors had been waiting for him, and they were ready. But what was it they were waiting for? The answer came to him slowly, like a memory forgotten and then rediscovered. It wasn't just Earth that had been lost. It was the power that humanity had once wielded. The technology, the strength, the knowledge of the stars. All of it had been buried, locked away, hidden for reasons unknown. Now, the galaxy had moved on, and humanity's influence had been forgotten. But the warriors, and the first, were about to change that. He turned back to the woman. "Where do we start?" Her eyes gleamed with hope. "We begin by reclaiming what is ours." The first nodded, a deep sense of purpose filling him. It was time for humanity to rise again. It was time to awaken the galaxy to the truth. The warriors, the first, and the legacy of a forgotten civilization were ready. The time of sleep was over. The time of action had begun. The warriors stood like statues, their eyes glowing faintly with a strange, otherworldly light. Each of them seemed as if they were waiting for a command, for a signal to move, to spring to life in the service of their long-lost creators. The first, still gathering his bearings, surveyed the scene with a mixture of awe and determination. The world outside had changed. Earth had changed. But within these walls, within this tomb, nothing had shifted. It was as if time itself had waited for him to rise, to restore what had once been. The woman, still standing before him, met his gaze with a quiet intensity. Her words lingered in the air, their weight heavy on the first's mind. "We begin by reclaiming what is ours." But reclaiming what? Earth? Humanity? Or something even greater? The first slowly turned back toward the warriors. His hands, rough with disuse, clenched into fists. He felt a strange power flowing through him. Raw, untapped, ancient. The warriors were not simply soldiers. They were the embodiment of a legacy, a living testament to the strength and resilience of humanity. And now, they were his to command. "What is the current state of the galaxy?" The words came from his lips, though he wasn't entirely sure why he asked. But he had to know. He had to understand what had become of the vast empire that had once been his people's. The woman hesitated for a moment before speaking. "The galaxy has moved on. Earth was forgotten. Your people, were erased from history. The Council, the intergalactic powers, they rule without fear of human interference. They believe humanity to be extinct, lost in the pages of ancient history." The first's eyes hardened. "And they were wrong," he muttered, his voice low, yet filled with an undeniable power. She nodded solemnly. "Yes, but the galaxy does not remember the strength of Earth, the wars we fought, the empires we built, the technology we created. None of that is known to them. They do not fear us because they do not know what we were capable of." The first's mind raced, his memories slowly coming back. His people had been great, capable of feats that others could only dream of. They had explored the stars, created technologies that defied the very laws of nature. But something had gone wrong. A betrayal, perhaps, an unforeseen enemy, and humanity had been scattered, their power lost to time. But now he was awake, and with the warriors at his side, it was clear that humanity's story was far from over. He turned back to the woman, his resolve hardening. We need to find out what happened to Earth, who is responsible for its fall. We need to know who erased humanity from the stars. The woman nodded, stepping forward. I will guide you, but be warned, those who caused humanity's fall will not take kindly to your return. They will see you as a threat, and they will come for you. The first nodded grimly. Let them come. With a deep breath, the first took his first step outside the tomb. The air was different here, fresher, more alive. It smelled of metal and dust, but also of possibility. It was the scent of a world that had long since moved on, but was now about to change once more. The warriors followed, their synchronized movements a reminder of the precision with which they had been crafted. They were a reminder of what humanity had been, and what it could become again. As the first looked up at the sky, he felt a deep connection to the Earth he had left behind. He remembered its oceans, its cities, the laughter of his people. It was all gone now, lost in the wake of some tragedy that he couldn't yet remember. But the anger stirred inside him, and with it, a burning determination. We will reclaim what is ours, he whispered to himself, and we will make them fear us. The woman beside him spoke again, her voice quieter this time. Where will we begin? The first thought for a moment. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless species and unknown dangers. But there was one thing he knew for certain. Whoever had caused humanity's downfall would have left traces. There would be clues, remnants of their involvement in Earth's destruction, and those clues would lead them to the answers they sought. We begin by reaching out to the galaxy, the first said, his voice steady and filled with purpose. We will send a message, a warning. Let them know that humanity is not dead. Let them know that we are coming. The woman's eyes widened, but she did not question him. She simply nodded. And if they do not listen, then we will make them listen. The first turned and began walking, his footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness of the land beyond the tomb. The warriors followed, their movements fluid and precise, like a well-oiled machine. Each one was a reflection of his people's greatest strength, unity. They would be his force, his army, and together they would reshape the galaxy. As they traveled, the first could feel the weight of the centuries pressing on his shoulders. But it was no longer a burden. It was a responsibility, one that he would carry with pride. He was the last of his kind, the first of many to come. And the galaxy would soon know that humanity had not been forgotten. They would know that humanity had only been waiting for the right moment to rise again. The first's footsteps grew steadier with each passing moment. The air outside the tomb was thick with the scent of iron, and the faint hum of ancient machinery hidden beneath the planet's surface. His eyes scanned the horizon, where the ruins of what once might have been a bustling civilization now lay in ruins. The trees had grown wild, and the earth had reclaimed much of what had been built. Nature had taken back what mankind had once owned. Despite the stillness of the land, a sense of urgency pulsed through the air. There was a fire in the first's chest, a need to understand, to rebuild, to reclaim. He was not just waking up from a long sleep. He was stepping into a war that had already begun, a war whose outcome had yet to be written. Humanity was not dead. It had only been in hibernation. Behind him, the woman who had guided him from the tomb walked with purpose, matching his pace. Her face, though weathered with age, remained calm, determined. Her eyes, however, told a different story, a story of survival, of watching the galaxy move on while Earth was forgotten. She had witnessed the fall of humanity firsthand, and her allegiance to the first was unwavering. He was the hope she had waited for, the key to reclaiming what was lost. The warriors followed silently, their movements synchronized and eerily precise. Each of them stood like a pillar of unwavering resolve, the silent protectors of an ancient and forgotten legacy. The first could sense their readiness, their anticipation to be commanded, to fulfill the purpose they were created for. There was no time to waste. The first finally spoke, his voice breaking the heavy silence that had enveloped them. We need to gather information. If Earth is still there, hidden, forgotten, we need to find it. The woman nodded, understanding the urgency in his tone. There are factions in the galaxy who may know something. They remember the power humanity once wielded. Some may even have been involved in its downfall. We need to seek them out, gain their trust, or their fear. The first's eyes narrowed. Fear is a powerful motivator. But it's respect that we need. Respect for what humanity was, and what it can become again. He stopped, turning to the woman. Where do we start? She paused, considering his question. There is a place, a station on the outskirts of the galaxy, on the border of territory controlled by the dominant powers. It's a neutral ground, a place where various factions, including the ones who may know about Earth, gather. We can find information there. The first turned, facing the distant stars above. The vastness of the galaxy stretched before him, a field of possibility. But he knew that every move they made would be fraught with danger. The galaxy had moved on without humanity. Now it would have to reckon with humanity's return. Then that's where we go, the first said, his voice steady. Prepare the warriors. We leave now. The woman's eyes flickered with a spark of hope. For so long, she had believed that humanity's time was over, that Earth was just a memory. But now, standing before the first, she could feel the stirring of something greater, something that had been dormant for millennia. The warriors quickly began their preparations, moving with precision, checking their weapons, ensuring everything was in order. The first watched them, his mind already moving ahead. He would need to understand the situation, piece together what had happened to Earth, and what role humanity could play in the galaxy once again. He would need to form alliances, gain the respect of those who held power, and, if necessary, force their hand. The first approached one of the warriors, a tall figure with a helmet that reflected the dim light of the planet's moon. He spoke to it in a low, commanding tone. You will lead the formation. Keep the others ready. We move swiftly and silently. Alert me if anything unusual occurs. The warrior gave a single nod before turning to lead the group. There was no hesitation, no question. It was as if the warrior had been waiting for this moment, waiting to carry out its purpose. The first and the woman walked side by side as the warriors assembled. The sky above them seemed endless, the stars shimmering faintly like beacons guiding them toward their unknown future. They had no ship, no means of interstellar travel, but the first wasn't concerned. He had the warriors, and they had a way of moving through the galaxy that no one could match. Tell me more about this station, the first said, his voice calm but curious. What kind of people will we encounter there? The woman's expression grew more serious as she considered the question. It's a place of exchange, trade, information, and sometimes even secrets. You'll find smugglers, mercenaries, and diplomats. There are those who seek power, and those who wish to avoid it. And there are whispers about Earth. Some of the factions there still remember. The first listened carefully, piecing together the information. What are the chances they'll know anything useful? Very few, she replied. But there's one faction in particular, an old merchant guild, who once had dealings with Earth. They might know something. They're known for their secrecy, but they also have a reputation for being open to trade. If we approach them with the right offer, we may gain access to their knowledge. The first nodded. We will approach them, but we must be cautious. If they know anything about Earth, they will not give up that knowledge easily. As they spoke, the warriors finished their preparations. The air was charged with a sense of anticipation, of something bigger just beyond the horizon. The time for secrets was over. The time to act had arrived. The first stood tall, looking at the woman. I know what's at stake. The warriors know their purpose. And now we take the first step toward reclaiming what is ours. The woman nodded, her eyes full of resolve. For Earth, she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. The first's gaze shifted to the warriors, who stood ready and waiting. Their bodies were poised for action, their expressions masked, but their presence undeniable. They were ready to follow him into the unknown, to face whatever lay ahead. And so, with no more words, the group set off toward the distant stars. Their journey had just begun, and already the galaxy was on notice. The first had awakened, and humanity's legacy would no longer be buried in the past. They would rise again, and they would make the galaxy remember what it had once lost. The ship was a marvel of design, sleek, silent, and deceptively small for the power it contained. The first stood at the helm, gazing out at the starfield beyond, as the warriors around him prepared for their mission. The woman beside him had given him no warning of what to expect when they arrived, only telling him to be cautious, to trust no one. The journey had been swift, and the vastness of the galaxy stretched out before them like an uncharted sea, filled with mysteries both known and unknown. But the first wasn't one to wait in silence. He had a purpose now, a goal. The past lay in ruins, but the future was still theirs to claim. He turned to the woman. What do we know about this faction? The Guild, the one with information about Earth. The woman's face was unreadable, her eyes dark with past secrets. They call themselves the Star Traders. They once had a significant presence on Earth, trading in rare goods and technology. After Earth's fall, they scattered, but their network remained strong. If anyone knows what happened to Earth, or what is left of it, it's them. But they will not give that information freely. They only respect one thing: power. The first nodded. Then we show them power. The warriors, stationed in the various parts of the ship, were a constant presence, silent, always alert. They weren't just soldiers. They were symbols of humanity's strength, frozen in time yet still very much alive, their loyalty unquestionable. The ship sped through space, the stars stretching out in the distance like a field of glowing diamonds. The first could feel the anticipation in the air, the electric charge of something monumental on the verge of happening. This was the first step toward humanity's return to the galaxy, a small but significant one. But for the first, every step was vital. He couldn't afford to make mistakes, not now. Soon, the ship came upon the outskirts of a dense asteroid field. It was here that the Star Traders had set up their station, hidden among the floating debris. The first had been briefed on the location, but seeing it for the first time was something entirely different. The station itself was an immense structure, a tangled mess of metal and rock, held together by gravity fields and energy shields. Ships came and went constantly, moving in and out like a swarm of insects, each one more diverse than the last, an assortment of ships from every corner of the galaxy. "This is it," the woman said, her voice low as she stepped closer to the first. "The Star Traders Hub. It's a place where deals are made in the shadows and secrets are sold for the right price." The first didn't hesitate. "Prepare the warriors. We go in armed, but we make no threats. We're here for information and nothing more." She nodded, moving to give the order. The warriors gathered in the chamber, their expressions focused, their weapons concealed but within reach. The first had no doubts about their readiness. They would not fail. As the ship docked, the first could feel the weight of his purpose pressing down on him. He had to make them listen. The galaxy was vast, and it was easy to be forgotten among its countless stars and races. But Earth had never been weak. It had been strong, and it would rise again. The ramp lowered, and they disembarked, stepping onto the station's metallic floors. The air was thick with the scent of oil and synthetic food, and the hum of distant conversations filled the atmosphere. The Star Traders Hub was a world unto itself, alive with movement, chaos, and the constant exchange of goods and information. The woman led the way, her steps confident, though her eyes darted around warily, scanning the crowd. She had been here before, but the first was an unknown, a presence that would draw attention. They reached a small, dimly lit cantina at the edge of the station. The patrons inside. A figure in the back corner looked up as they approached. He was older, grizzled, and dressed in the kind of ragged clothes that suggested both wealth and a complete disregard for appearance. His eyes, sharp and calculating, locked onto the first. "Looking for something?" the man asked, his voice gravelly but with an unmistakable edge of interest. He had been watching them the entire time. "We're looking for information," the woman answered smoothly. "We hear you know things about Earth." The man's eyes flickered, and a brief flash of recognition passed through them. The first could see the calculation in the man's eyes, the same kind of cold, analytical gaze that had studied battlefields, strategies, and enemies for years. He was no stranger to secrets. "You'll have to be more specific," the man said, his tone carefully neutral. "Many people seek information, but it's not something I just hand out. It's valuable, and it's not free." The first stepped forward, his presence imposing even in the dim light of the cantina. His voice was steady, confident, and filled with quiet authority. "We are not here for your petty dealings. We seek knowledge that could change the galaxy." The man's lips twitched, a thin smile forming as he studied the first with a new curiosity. "Is that so? And what makes you think I'd be interested in helping someone like you?" The first met his gaze with a steady look, his words calculated. "Because Earth is not dead. It was never forgotten. And now we're going to make the galaxy remember what it lost. You want power, information. I can give you something far more valuable. We can give you the strength of humanity, the strength you've forgotten." The man laughed softly, leaning back in his chair. "Bold words, my friend. But what makes you think I believe you?" The first raised a hand, and the warriors surrounding him shifted subtly, a show of strength. The room's atmosphere changed in an instant, an undercurrent of tension, of unease, rippling through the crowd. The Star Trader's eyes flickered nervously. These weren't just any mercenaries. These were the creations of a forgotten empire. "You will believe me when I make you," the first said quietly. For a long moment, the man didn't speak, his gaze shifting from the first to the warriors. Finally, he leaned forward, his fingers tapping lightly on the table. "All right, you've got my attention. But there's a price for knowledge." The first nodded. "Name it." The man smiled, a thin, sharp grin. "The price is simple. You'll have to earn that knowledge. There are many who will not welcome the return of Earth's legacy. But there are others, those who will fight to keep it buried. We'll see if you're worthy of what you seek." The first's resolve hardened. He was no stranger to danger, to enemies, to the cost of power. But Earth's legacy had to be reclaimed, and if this was the price he had to pay, then so be it. "Then let the game begin," the first said. The first stood motionless in the center of the cantina, his gaze unwavering as the tension thickened around him. The Star Trader's cryptic words lingered in the air, the weight of their implication settling over the room like a dense fog. Earn the knowledge. He could feel the ripples of fear among the traders, the kind of fear that was often born of an unknown, a power that was no longer in their control. The man who had been watching them smirked, sensing the shift in the room. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers brushing a small device on the table. The device lit up, and a holographic map sprang to life, hovering in the air between them. "There are forces that would rather keep Earth's legacy buried, as I said," the Star Trader continued, his tone darkening. "But you need to understand one thing. We're not dealing with just anyone. These people, they have been preparing for a very long time." The map zoomed in on several distant planets and stations, marked with red dots, each one pulsating with an ominous glow. "These are the key players," the trader explained, his voice low. the ones who will move to stop you, to crush your ambitions before they take root. But if you're brave enough to seek this information, to awaken that which was forgotten, then you'll need to confront them all. The first studied the map with cold intensity, his mind already calculating the best course of action. He had expected this, though not with such clarity. The galaxy had grown complacent in its belief that Earth's time had passed, but he knew better. Earth's might was not gone. It had merely been asleep, waiting for the right moment to awaken. "What makes you think we're not already prepared for them?" the woman beside him asked, her voice sharp, but with an undercurrent of doubt. The trader chuckled darkly, as though he found their confidence amusing. "I've seen many try to reclaim what they think was lost. None have succeeded. Earth was not just a home. It was a symbol, a beacon to many. But the galaxy has forgotten how to fear it. If you intend to change that, you'll need more than just power. You'll need allies." The first did not flinch at the mention of allies. In his mind, Earth had never lacked allies. It had always stood alone. And perhaps that was the true strength of humanity, its ability to endure and rise against any odds, without needing anyone's permission. Still, the Star Trader was right about one thing. Earth was forgotten, and to bring it back into the fold, he would need to challenge the very fabric of the galaxy's established order. "You speak of allies, but you haven't told me who your enemies are," the first said, his voice calm, measured. The Star Trader leaned forward, a glint of warning flashing in his eyes. "You'll face the Galactic Order, the true rulers of this galaxy. Beneath their gilded veneer, they control everything. Resources, technology, even the people. And they'll see your return as a direct challenge to their control. They won't allow it. No one challenges them and survives." The first didn't flinch, but his mind raced. The Galactic Order. He'd heard whispers of their power, their influence that stretched to the farthest corners of the galaxy. But he was not afraid of the Order. He had seen worse. Earth had faced greater threats in the past and had triumphed. And now, with the warriors by his side, Earth's legacy would rise again. "You'll need more than just your warriors to win this battle," the Star Trader continued, his tone now laced with something approaching respect. "The Order has resources you can't imagine. Entire fleets of warships, planets fortified like fortresses, and an intelligence network that would make even the most covered operations look like open books." The first took a deep breath. "I know, but we don't need to defeat them all at once. We need to send a message that Earth is back, a message they can't ignore." The woman, who had been standing quietly by his side, now spoke. "We have one advantage. The Order doesn't know about us yet. They don't know that Earth still exists, or that we have awakened." The trader gave them a grim smile. "That's true. For now, you still have the element of surprise. But don't waste it. You have one shot at this, and you can't afford to miss." The first nodded solemnly. "Then we'll make it count." The trader watched him for a moment longer before tapping a few more commands into his device. The holographic map shifted, showing several hidden locations in the galaxy. "These are places you might want to start with," he said. "There are rumors of a rebellion on the planet of Galeris. Small, but it has potential. If you want to make a real impact, start there. There are others, too. You'll find allies where you least expect them. Just be careful. Not everyone will be as willing to follow a leader who doesn't have the galaxy's approval." The first looked at the map, his mind already making the necessary calculations. He knew what he had to do. The warriors, his silent companions, stood ready to follow him wherever he led. And if there was one thing he knew, it was that he would never stop. Earth would rise, no matter the cost. "Thank you," the first said, his voice cold and final. "We'll take it from here." The trader nodded, his expression unreadable. "Just remember what I said. You're not the only one who's been waiting for this moment. And the galaxy will never be the same once you've begun." The first turned away, his back straight and resolute, and the woman followed, her eyes scanning the room one last time before they left. The warriors remained silent, their faces impassive, but their bodies were taut with anticipation. The path ahead would be dangerous, filled with enemies that would stop at nothing to preserve their hold on the galaxy. But the first was not afraid. He had waited too long for this moment, and now nothing would stand in his way. As they exited the cantina, the hum of the ship's engines filled the silence, a reminder that the journey was far from over. But the first knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. Earth was coming back, and the galaxy would soon remember what it had forgotten. The journey to Galactic was long, and the tension that hung in the air seemed to thicken with each passing day. The first stood at the bridge of the ship, gazing out into the infinite expanse of space. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, each one filled with a sense of purpose, a certainty that the galaxy was on the cusp of a new era. Earth was waking up, and with it, humanity's true power was beginning to resurface. But there was still much to do, much to overcome. He knew that the task ahead would not be easy, and the forces arrayed against them were far more dangerous than any of them had anticipated. The woman who had traveled with him, her eyes sharp and calculating, stood beside him. She had been silent for much of the journey, her mind working as quickly as his own, no doubt strategizing, planning their next steps. She was a tactician, one of the few people who had understood the magnitude of what they were about to face. Her loyalty was unquestioned, but she, too, was beginning to feel the weight of what was ahead. "We're getting close," she said, her voice calm, but there was an edge to it, a tension that could not be masked. "Do you think they'll be ready for us?" The first's gaze remained fixed on the stars, but his mind had already shifted to the next step. He could feel the pulse of the galaxy, the energy that was building around him, as if the universe itself were holding its breath. Galactic was a rebellious planet, a place where the discontented had gathered to form a resistance against the corrupt galactic order. The people here were not soldiers, not by any stretch of the imagination, but they were ready to fight, to rise up against the tyranny they had lived under for far too long. And the first intended to show them the way. "They'll be more than ready," he said, his voice steady, betraying no hint of doubt. "They've been waiting for someone to show them how to fight back. We'll give them that." His words were met with a brief silence, but the woman nodded, her expression softening just slightly. She understood. They all did. They weren't just fighting for themselves, for Earth. They were fighting for anyone who had ever been oppressed, anyone who had ever been silenced by the weight of a galaxy that had long since forgotten compassion. They were fighting for the very soul of the galaxy itself. As the ship drew closer to Galactic, the stars outside the viewport slowly shifted, the glowing planet coming into view. It was a beautiful sight, lush forests, vast oceans, and towering mountains that stretched into the clouds. But the beauty was a lie, a mask hiding the suffering that lay beneath. Galactic had been ravaged by war, by constant uprisings and crackdowns by the galactic order. The people who lived here had seen more than their fair share of loss, and now they were ready to fight back in any way they could. The ship landed on the outskirts of a small village on the edge of a vast forest, the perfect place to meet with the local resistance. The first, the woman, and the warriors disembarked, the group moving with practiced efficiency, their steps silent but purposeful. The air was thick with tension as they approached the small building that had been set up as a meeting place for the resistance leaders. The first could sense that the moment of truth was rapidly approaching. The resistance leaders were waiting for them inside, a ragtag group of men and women who had long been fighting for their freedom. They looked worn, tired, their faces etched with the pain of those who had been at war for far too long. But there was a spark in their eyes, something that told the first that they were ready for whatever came next. A tall man, his face scarred from years of conflict, stepped forward to greet them. His eyes studied the first for a moment, sizing him up before he spoke. "You're the one they've been talking about," the man said, his voice rough but steady. "The one who claims to be able to bring Earth back." The first didn't flinch. He knew the weight of the man's words. Earth had been forgotten by so many, written off as a lost cause, but he was here to change that. He was here to remind them all of the power that humanity had once wielded. "I'm not just here to bring Earth back," the first replied, his voice unwavering. "I'm here to remind you all what you've forgotten. The galaxy hasn't seen anything yet." The man studied him for a moment longer before nodding. "I hope you're right. We've been waiting for someone like you to show us the way." The woman at his side stepped forward, her eyes scanning the room. "We have a plan," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "But we'll need your help. We'll need every fighter, every person who's ready to stand against the Galactic Order." The resistance leaders exchanged glances, some nodding, others more hesitant. The first could see the uncertainty in their eyes, but he knew what had to be done. They needed to see the vision, to understand that this was not just a rebellion, it was a revolution, and it was time for them to join it. "We don't have the luxury of time," the first said, his voice hardening. "The Order won't let us gather our forces without retaliation. They'll come for us, and when they do, we need to be ready." A murmur of agreement passed through the room. The leaders were beginning to understand, to feel the weight of what was at stake. The first had given them hope, but it wasn't enough. They needed more than hope. They needed action, and that was something the first knew how to deliver. The woman beside him placed a map on the table, her fingers tracing the lines that would guide them to victory. "Here are the locations of the Order's strongholds," she said. "We'll hit them where it hurts, one at a time. We'll gather resources, recruit more fighters, and show the galaxy that Earth is back." The first nodded in approval. The plan was solid, and with the Resistance's help, they could make it work. But there was something else, something deeper, that was driving him. This wasn't just about taking down the Galactic Order. It was about sending a message. Earth was coming back, and it would not bow to anyone. Not now, not ever. The tall Resistance leader stepped forward again, his expression more serious now. "If we do this, there's no going back. The Order will retaliate, and they won't show mercy." The first met his gaze, his expression unwavering. "Then we'll show them what it means to face Earth's wrath." The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of their words hanging in the air. But then, one by one, the Resistance leaders nodded. They were with him. The first had no doubt now. Together, they would change the course of the galaxy. The battle for the future of Earth had begun.